have Hey Aleph. If one buys from a baker, how does he tithe? He takes a quantity sufficient for true Maisa and Challah and says 100 of this on this side is Maisa and the rest is Maisa, and the rest of the Maisa joins it. That which I rendered Maisa is rendered true Maisa on it, and the rest is Challah. And Maisa Sheni in the north or the south of it, and it is redeemed with money. If one wishes to separate Truma and Truma's Maisa jointly, he takes one part in 33 and one third and says 100th of what is here on this side is Chulin and the rest is Truma for the whole. And 100 Chulin that is here on this side is Meiser and the rest of joining it is Meiser. That which I rendered Meiser is Truma, Meiser, and Truma Meiser for it. And the rest is Chala and Meiser Sheni in the north or the south of it and is redeemed with money. If one buys from a baker, he may tithe from the warm from the cold, and from the cold for the warm, even if of several moles. So says Reb Meir. Reb Yehuda forbids because I say yesterday's wheat was from one and today's wheat from another. Reb Shimon forbids in the case of Truma Maisa, but permits in the case of Challah.
Okay. Okay, so just hold on to those shittos right for now because we're going to need them in the next Mishnah. So Rabbi
Okay.
Meir is fine with taking tithes. Doesn't matter what the shape is. Okay. And he's fine with yesterday for today, all cool. But Rabbi Yehuda's got an issue with yesterday for today because he might have taken from different suppliers on different days. Now, Dalit says halokech min palter. As opposed to the baker, the palter is the retailer. He's the bread. He's the nougatine
Okay.
store. Okay, where he's selling all the stuff that he got from the bakers. Okay, and this guy is an Amaretz. Okay, because we don't know that stuff that he got came from we don't know who his supplier is. We presume that his supplier, even if he wasn't a baker, the bakers don't are allowed to sell are allowed to sell Demai on to retailers. Me'aser mikol tus utus, divrei Rabbi Meir. So now in this case over here, Rabbi Meir says he's buying from multiple bakers. So you've got to look at the shape of the bread, right? What kind of form it came from, and say, okay, now you got to take it from. Now you got to assume that each one is individual, and some of them might have mastered, and some of them might not, and therefore you have to do your separation of maser from each one individually. Okay, or each group of shapes. Rabbi Yehuda me'echad ala kol. He says, nah, that's nothing. It's more convenient for the so Rabbi Yehuda doesn't mind different shapes, uh, and he is acting under the presumption that the retailer is getting all of his stuff from one baker, and therefore he can do one set of master on all the produce. Mode Rabbi Yehuda veloker min amonpol. But however, if the retailer has a monopoly, then he agrees. He says manpol, interesting. That comes from the Greek word, which is the same one that leads to monopoly. So we've got the same etymology over here. Shehu me'aser mikol echad ve'echad. If somebody's got a monopoly, then who else are all the different bakers going to sell to? So he's the
Right.
only guy, and therefore you would have to take master from each individual style. Let's say that's the only way that we can distinguish between the bakers. Okay. Mishna hey halokech min ha'ani v'chein ha'ani shenasnu lo prusos pas or pilchei devela. So the ani is going around begging from door to door, and instead of giving him money, people are giving him bits of food, and you have no idea whether the person who we assume everything is kosher, but Amay Aretz also give tzedakah. So we don't. So now the ani has gathered together this pile of food, and he says, "Look, I can't eat all of this. Can I please sell you some, and then I can use the money to buy other food." Um, and so now you want to buy it from him and help him out, but can you trust the stuff? Okay, so if and or the ani himself, if the ani is a guy who wants to be careful about what he eats, remember, an ani is allowed to eat demai. You're allowed to give demai to an ani.
Right.
Okay, but if this ani is makpid himself, and he wants to make sure that he's keeping the halachas. Um, so now he's got slices of bread or big chunks of fig cake. Me'aser mikol echad ve'echad. He has to take each individual one. He doesn't know who he got from, who took maaser, who didn't take maaser. So each piece has to be tithed in its own right. Me'aser mikol echad ve'echad. U'b'tmarim u'b'grogros bolel v'notel. However, if it's date season or fig season, and people are just throwing piles of fruit into a sack, and now he's coming out, and now he's got this big fat sack of dates. And he doesn't have to take each individual date out and take a little piece of each date and call that a maaser. Okay.
Right.
Rather, because it's all of one type. Chachamim said you can treat this as if it's wet, even though it's dry. You can treat it as if it's wet and it's all mixed in, and therefore, whatever the proportions are going to come out equally. So if you need to take out if you've got like 100 dates in there and you need to pull out 10, you can say those 10 of the master are okay. They came from whatever they're a reflection. They're a fair reflection of the composition of whatever went in there. Okay. Amar Rabbi Yehuda.
I'm sorry, but he says here you can mix the dried figs and the dates together.
Bolel v'notel. You can mix them and you take out and whatever it is we'll assume is the equal proportion. This is how it would be if you'd taken, let's say, wine from a number of people and you mix them all together. Say, okay, it's all mixed together, so whatever you pull out is of equal proportion. And we're going to say the same thing by the dry things, even though they are dry. Like, and by the way, we have things like flour, which we know we treat as wet, as if they're wet, even though they're dry. But if you took
Right.
flour from a lot of people and put them all into one sack and you mix it all around, and you say, okay, it's like a liquid.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, the big chiddush of this mission is that Chachamim gave him permission to treat these small things, dates and figs, as if they're also a liquid. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Emasai, when can he do this? Bizman shematana meruba, only when he's got a lot of it. Aval bizman shematana muetes me'asim mikol echad ve'echad. If he's got 10 figs inside there, you can't say, well, they're kind of mixed in and it's a small thing. You can't treat this as any kind of a liquid because he's only going to pull out one fig and maybe that fig is already pater. Maybe this fig was already mastered. And now you're taking truma from that based on and it's pater. You can't take from the pater and the chayev. Okay, so that would not work. It's got to be of sufficiently, and unfortunately the Mishnah doesn't tell us what exactly is the bar for what's the dividing line between meruba and moetes. But we'll leave that as a tzarech Ion. Ask your Rav if that ever comes to practical shaila. Mishnah Vav halakech min siton. Siton is a wholesaler. Okay. V'chazer v'lakach mimenu shniya, and he goes and then he goes back and buys another batch of whatever he's buying. Lo ya'aser mizeh al zeh afilu me'oso hasod afilu me'oso hamin. Okay. Now the wholesaler, again, he buys produce from a lot of different people, and he bought one batch, let's say, of flour, um, and uh, and so he takes it home, and now he's got to treat this as Demai. So, I need to go back and get some more flour. Goes back, gets more flour from the same bin. He reaches into the same bin, fills it up, and whatever. Um, it says the Mishnah, you cannot treat them that is the same as the first batch, right? So you can't come back home and put it in the same pile as the first. Actually, flour is a bad example because you dafka could because you just mix it around and you could take it proportionally. Um, but let's say it's something more like fruits. That you bought a bunch of apples from the wholesaler, and he said, "Oh, I don't have enough." Goes back, buys another batch of apples, brings them home. Can you put them into one big pile and take maaser from one and the other? They say no because because when the wholesaler's produce moves quickly, and he could already um, have gotten this from a different supplier who may not have mastered it. Okay. לא יעשר מזה על זה אפילו מסעוsa הסוג אפילו מעוsa hamir, even if everything else about it is identical. However, if you've got a problem with this, there's a simple remedy. נאמן הסיתון לומר משל אחד הם. When you go back the second time, you say, "Listen, have you? I took some apples from this bin over here. Are these apples over here still from the same supplier?" And if the Citon says, "Yeah, they're the same. It's the same supplier," then fine, take them and mix them, and you don't have a problem. See, the
Uh,
niceness of the Amaretz, he's not believed to say that it was tithed, but you can believe him to say that he's got only one supplier. That he's not going to lie about. He's got no reason to lie about it. He might
right.
lie about having taken Masa from it because he's embarrassed or whatever, but or he just doesn't know the halacha of how to take properly. But he knows who supplies him, and you can trust him.
Okay. Okay.
Aleph
Okay.
base.
Demai, olive base. Demai is not subject to the fifth and to removal, and it may be eaten by an onan. And it may be taken into Yerushalayim and taken out again, and a small quantity may be left on the road. And one may give it to an Amaretz, but must consume its equivalent, and it may be changed silver for silver, copper for copper, silver for copper, and copper for fruit, provided that the fruit will be redeemed for money. So says Rav Meir. But it could come and say the fruit must be taken up to Yerushalayim and eaten there. If one buys food for seed and for cattle, flour for hides, for oil for the lamp, oil for the greasing animals, it is exempt from Demai. Both Kizib and beyond, one is exempt from Demai. The challah of an Amaretz and most produce and what he has brought with the Maisa Sheni money and the remainder of this meal offerings are exempt from Demai. Perfumed oil, Beit Shammai declares it liable. Beis Hillel says exempt. The mind may be used for an erev and for partnership, and the blessing is recited thereon. And one invites on it, and one may separate it in the nude or at dusk. If one has separated Maisa Sheni before Maisa Rishon, it does not matter. Oil which with the weaver rubs on his fingers is liable to the mai, but that which the whole wool coma puts on the wool is exempt from the mai. Okay.
Okay. Brachas. Vav Zion.
They served him with a savory to begin with and bread with it. He cites the appropriate blessing over the savory and exempts the bread, since the bread is now secondary. This is the rule. Whenever there is a staple food accompanied by a subsidiary item, he recites the blessing over the staple and exempts the subsidiary. If he ate if he ate figs, grapes, or pomegranates, he recites thereafter three blessings. So says Rabbi Amil. The sages say one blessing, the substance of the three. Rabbi Kiva says even if he ate boiled vegetables only for his meal, he recites thereafter three blessings. And if he drank water to quench his thirst, he should say, through whose word all things exist. And Mertarfin says, who creates many living things. The who have eaten together are required to invite. If one ate the mine, the first tithe from which the heave offering has been separated, and the second tithe for food offering to the sanctuary that has been redeemed, and the waiter who has eaten an olive sides of food and the kasuti, they all be included for the invitation. But one who ate tevel and the first tithe from which truma had not been set aside, and the second tithe and consecrated fruits which had been not redeemed, and the waiter who ate less than an olive size of food, and the Gentile, or not to be included in the invitation. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, we are on to Nida. Okay, base. If blood is found on the examination table, on an examination cloth, and they are tummy and obligated to bring conveys tumor retroactively for a period of 24 hours and does not convey tumor to the one who cohabitated with her. Rabbi Akiva says she also conveys tumor to the one who cohabitated with her. The sages concede to Rabbi Akiva in a case where she sees a blood stain that she conveys tumor to the one who had cohabitated with her. All women are in a presumptive state of tahara for their husbands. Men returning from a journey, their wives are in a presumptive state of a tahara for them. Beis Shammai says a woman needs two examination cloths for each and every act of cohabitation, or she should cohabitate by using the light of a lamp. Beis Hillel says two examination cloths suffice for her for the entire night. Okay.
And
Anyone? Yes, yeah. Regarding one whom a tummy may touch and who had foods and beverages in his mouth, if he inserted his head into a towel or oven, they render a tummy. And a towel person who has food or beverages in his mouth and he inserted his head into the ashes of a tummy earthenware oven, they are redeemed tummy. If one was eating a pressed fig with soiled hands, and he inserted his hand into his mouth to remove a pebble, there may arouse a tummy. So Huda was a tahu. Rabbi Yossi says if he turned it over, it is tummy, but if he did not turn it over, it is tahor, and there was a pungent in his mouth. Rabbi Yossi says if it was to relieve his thirst, it is tummy. Regarding a woman from whose breast milk dripped and the milk fell into the face of an oven, it is tummy for a beverage. It can transmit tumor whether one was pleased or was not pleased. If she was shoveling ashes out of the